Hello friends, welcome to my writing corner. October is almost over and that means that it's almost time for NaNoWriMo to start. Since my last video, things haven't gone exactly to plan, but in a lot of ways they've actually gone better. I was planning on prepping a lot of different ideas and then picking the best one to use as my NaNoWriMo novel, but actually I fell in love with the first plot idea that I had, and I tried to develop a couple of other ideas, but in the end, I think I knew from the beginning that I was going to be doing a romance novel this November. So it turns out that was a pretty easy decision to make, and now I am fully committed to making a somewhat realistic-ish romance novel for NaNoWriMo. I'm going to set it in Indianapolis, and I'm going to be using a lot of real locations, and I'm going to be doing it as if it was set in summer 2022. I don't know if I'm going to be that explicit about it, but I'm going to write with that sort of time frame in mind. And I'm also planning on writing it in third person, which I'm not normally used to, but I'm going to do it like that so that I can get a more broad view of the story, and hopefully both characters will have time to do a little bit of their own side plots, so that way instead of being one person falling in love with one other person, it's going to be more of these two people have separate lives and they gradually become more and more connected. So here's what I've done so far. I've got my entire outline moved into a calendar, so that way every event in the plot is happening on a specific date, and I can see when plot-specific elements are going to happen, and then put subplots sort of in between the major scenes, and I know everything will flow well, because the idea, again, is to be somewhat realistic, so unlike previous novels where I just kind of say this thing happened and then this thing happened and then this thing happened, I'm going to be a lot more intentional with my use of time. So instead of saying this thing happens and then this thing happens, it'll be this thing happens and then exactly this many days later, this other thing happens. Which will be a little bit different for me because I normally write science fiction or fantasy where events tend to go directly one to the next. Like you besiege a castle, and then after the siege is done, then you storm the castle immediately. You don't wait after the siege is complete. I don't know, maybe that's a bad analogy. But basically, real life doesn't quite work like that, where you have one event and then it immediately goes into the next important event. So I'm going to be a bit more true to life in that way, where things happen and then there's some downtime, which I might talk about or I might not. And then we explicitly skip some time and get back into the story when it matters. Another reason why I really needed a calendar was because I have decided that one of my characters is going to be on a soccer team, and this soccer team needs to be realistic, which means having a full schedule. I've spent way too much time planning out an entire soccer league schedule for a fictional team that one of my characters will be not a star player on, but more like a fringe player who's working their way into the team. And I think that should also be a really interesting side plot, but it's one that you kind of have to keep track of a lot of moving parts, so I've tried to get all those moving parts worked out ahead of time, so when I'm writing I can just reference what's happening instead of deciding what should happen next. The other major thing I prepped was actually sort of a revelation for me. I realized, along with tracking time realistically, I also really needed to spend a lot of time thinking about characters and the ways that they're connected and kind of what the social web is going to look like here. And the way that I'm going to do that is with a spreadsheet, which I know is just the most romantic thing in the world. So I've got every character in a spreadsheet with names down the side and then personality traits across the top. So that way when I insert a personality trait for one character, suddenly now I have a spot to put that same personality trait for every character, and that should hopefully lead to more fleshed out characters, and that way when a character is talking about something about themselves, I can then quickly reference that same bit of information about another character, which might inform how they respond to that information. So basically, I care a lot about the passage of time, and I care a lot about how characters are going to relate to each other, which I think are two pretty important things to have in a romance novel. Now, I've done a lot of prep work this month, and we've only got about a week before NaNoWriMo starts, but I'm not completely done yet. I still need to flesh out my other main protagonist, because I've got my soccer star, and I've been spending so much time working on the soccer team and the soccer schedule that I've sort of forgotten that I need to focus on a whole separate person. So I'm going to really focus this week on getting the love interest all prepared and making sure that she's a full interesting person who can stand on her own and really have an answer to the question, why am I including this person as a point of view character and as a protagonist and thinking of them on equal footing when really I spent all my time thinking about soccer this entire time? Because on the other hand, it wouldn't really be that hard to just focus on the soccer and then have the romance be a side plot, but kind of the whole point of this novel is that I'm not going to do that, so I need to put a little bit more work in. Okay, so that's the prep. Now, I've also spent a lot of time thinking about how I'm going to actually write this thing, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 2,000 words a day, but also taking 1 day a week off. In addition to that, I'm going to try to go above 2,000 at least once a week. We'll see how all of this works out in practice. But I've taken a look at the past times when I've won NaNoWriMo, and I looked at what my writing habits were like. So what I'm going to try to do this year is take the things that I've learned about how I like to write, and instead of planning on writing a set number of words every day, I'm going to vary it based on how much time I want to spend writing every day. So some days I'll write more, some days I'll write less, always around 2,000. With a few days, I'm going to plan to go way above that, hopefully. And then, again, once a week, I'm going to take a day off. And also, I'm not going to stop at 50,000. I'm thinking, based on every time that I've won Nano before, I've finished about a week early. So for this go around, if I get to 50,000, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to see if I can push up to more like 70,000 and see if I can do that, because my last writing project that was not NaNoWriMo, I finished that at 70,000, and it seemed like a good stopping point. So to summarize, I have a plan. I've got a lot of prep work done, which means that I should be able to write pretty quickly because I'll know exactly what I need to write every day. I've got some flexibility, so if I feel like not writing the main story, I know when I can put in some side plots, which I'll come up with as I'm writing. And I have a general plan for how I'm going to do this, including some built-in breaks, and also expecting that I will probably maybe sorta go over 50K. And also I have a cover design. Here it is. Did I mention the book was going to be gay? I mean, obviously it's going to be gay. Like, they say write what you know, and I feel like, to me, that means there is no way I'm going to be doing this straight. I can't do anything straight. Anyways, that's all I've got for now. I think Preptober went really well for me, and I'll check back in next Wednesday. Hopefully things will have gone to plan. If not, maybe you'll see me really frazzled, ready to tell you all about how things did not go to plan. But at any rate, see you later.